Colorado lost their second quarterback commit in 2 days, but this one makes a little more sense.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borber. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast, right here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere. We got you covered. So today's episode of Locked On Buffs, we're going to be talking about Colorado's loss in recruiting again. We saw it yesterday. They lost Antoine Hill, the 2025 four-star, one of the top quarterbacks in the country. I believe he was ranked number 5 in terms of quarterbacks. Then today, they lost Danny O'Neal, who was the headliner quarterback of their 2024 class. And so I think a lot of people want to overreact. I think people thought I overreacted yesterday about Antoine Hill. I think losing Antoine Hill was a bigger deal than I think losing Danny O'Neal is. Not because of rankings, not because of Shedeur Sanders' status, which I'll get to in a little bit, but because it tells us something that we kind of already knew, which was Danny O'Neal was a Sean Lewis guy. John Garcia Jr., who was my former co-host, now covers recruiting over at Rivals. He interviewed Danny on this show a while back, and one of the biggest things would be one of the biggest aspects of his recruiting was his relationship with Sean Lewis. And so losing Danny O'Neal tells us that Sean Lewis, which we kind of already assumed, I'd been saying this from the moment he was demoted, that it was likely that Sean Lewis would no longer be the offensive coordinator or on staff at Colorado after the season because, one, he was never intending to be here for the long run. He had goals of being a head coach elsewhere. He was a head coach at Kent State, and I think the thought process was go to Colorado for a year, help them thrive and shine on offense, and give myself a bigger platform, which I think that was the goal for Coach Prime as well, in terms of why he brought Sean Lewis in. I think they hit a little rocky patch there from Stanford to UCLA, where Coach Prime decided that it wasn't a right fit for everybody involved for Sean Lewis to be calling plays, and so from that moment on, from the Oregon State week, when they decided to kind of demote him, strip him of his play calling duties, I think we all kind of knew that he was no longer going to be at Colorado. So either way, he was going to be a one and done. But losing Danny O'Neal kind of indicates that Danny O'Neal will probably want to play for Sean Lewis elsewhere, wherever that ends up. And so Sean Lewis has been linked to Syracuse. He's been linked to Indiana. He's kind of been linked all over the place. But this is where Danny O'Neal was crystal ball to Kentucky before he committed to Colorado. So he has offers from programs let's see, West Virginia, Wake Forest, Tulane, Syracuse. Then you go up a little further, Indiana, and he's an Indiana native, so maybe he stays home. Excuse me. Still under the weather, guys. I don't know what hit me, but I'm still a little bit under the weather. But he has offers from Syracuse, Indiana. So a lot of the places that Coach Sean Lewis is linked to, Danny O'Neal has offers from. So maybe he follows them somewhere else. But this is interesting because I think Colorado now has to go out in the portal and get a young quarterback. And I think a lot of people are surprised by when I say this, but the way Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, addressed Ryan Staub's performance, it sounded to me as if it was like a tryout or like a showcase for the portal. He said Staub played well. He was like, he played well, showcased what he could do, and that he doesn't think he's going to want to be the number 2 guy. No one wants to be the number 2 unless it's your number. And obviously Colorado has Shedeur Sanders. And so Shedeur Sanders is injured, which I'll get to in a little bit, but nobody purposely wants to be the backup. And so it seemed like Ryan Staub was going to be out the door. At least that's the way Coach Prime was making it seem. Maybe they had conversations already where Ryan was discussing the possibility of transferring. But Coach Prime, as we saw during the spring game, he said that he wanted the players from last year's roster to use the spring game as like a tryout, as a showcase where they could come in, play well, and then maybe get an offer somewhere else, like Montana Lemonia's Craig did. And I think that's kind of the vibe I got from his comments about Ryan Staub's performance against Utah. He played well, threw for like 195 yards, a touchdown. He's a mobile guy too, which I don't think he showcased that a lot. But regardless, I think that Colorado has a quarterback issue heading into next season. Not because of Shedeur Sanders, but because of where they go after. They have Galvin Cold, who's a walk-on junior college guy. He played a little bit against, I think it was Washington State. He was the guy that threw the pass that got intercepted after it was batted down and he caught it. Really bizarre play. Never seen anything like it. I've seen Marcus Mariota throw a pass to himself, like throw a pass, get it deflected, then catch it for a touchdown. But I've never seen someone throw a pass, catch it, like get it deflected, catch it, throw it again, have that pass intercepted. That was quite bizarre. But nonetheless, I think there's a lot to be said about Colorado's kind of quarterback situation because they have Casey Wiseman. Like let's take a look at their depth chart right now because obviously the depth chart tells us everything we need to know. I don't think Danny O'Neal is going to come in and be the backup or be the starter right away by any means because obviously Shedeur's there. But I think having more talent in there would be helpful. And so right now it goes as follows: Shedeur, Ryan Staub, who may or may not be around next year, and then Gavin Cold. So I think if they could find a backup quarterback or a quarterback in the portal who's willing to come in and kind of maybe it's a freshman and it's like from a 4-star, like there's always guys that like Nick Evers that went to Wisconsin, or there's always guys like maybe Jake Garcia who transferred from Miami to Missouri, where you kind of propose like you could be the backup and then start the following year. And so maybe there's a guy out there that's interested in that. Not sure. But Colorado has lost 2 quarterback commits in the past 2 days. I'm more concerned with Antoine Hill, the loss of him, because, and a lot of you guys were like, oh, he's a 2025 commit. Who cares? He committed last month. So there was no like, oh, he was a Sean Lewis guy. He committed after Sean Lewis was already demoted. So there is really no reason for people to be like, oh, he's a Sean Lewis guy. Like, no, he wasn't. Um, he committed back in October, at the end of October, and Sean Lewis was demoted. Let me double check to make sure my timeline is correct here. But I'm pretty sure he committed after Sean Lewis was demoted. I think he was committing to Colorado itself. Oh no, around that same time. Not like right after, it was probably during or around. But either way, Antoine Hill had all the tools. I thought he would be the perfect replacement for Shedeur. Similar, bigger quarterback, big arm. I feel like they have a similar skill set where they can both run if needed, but they have huge arms. This past year, or 2022, he threw for 40 touchdowns, 3 picks. Whereas Danny O'Neal was on the smaller side, more of a scrambling quarterback. And obviously Colorado doesn't have a run game at the moment, so I'm not sure how he would have fit in. But nonetheless, they will have to look elsewhere. They are still in the mix for Bryce Underwood for 2025, which is the number 1 quarterback overall. So they have a lot of room to play. They have a lot of rocks to unturn or flip over, whatever you want to say. But either way, Colorado loses 2 quarterbacks. One makes sense. The other, I'm still a little worried about. But hey, nonetheless. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They have last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They have deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, an hour, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back. We were talking about Shedeur Sanders. This is a whole segment dedicated to giving Shedeur Sanders his flowers. I think we learned how tough he is, how dedicated of a teammate he is, because obviously Colorado, even though they were playing for a bowl game, I think it was quite clear that they were not I won't say that they didn't have a chance of making it, but it was an uphill battle for them. Let's just say that. And Shedeur Sanders realistically probably could have sat out the last few games due to injury, because obviously most sacked quarterback in the country. You could tell every time he got hit, he was wincing in pain. He was taking injections during the middle of games through the final stretch to help him deal with the pain. He soldiered through, he fought, he played, and he played well. And today or Sunday night, we learned in the most recent Well Off Media video that he fractured his back. So he was talking to Deion Jr. and Deion Jr. was like, Are they gonna talk about what happened to you?" And he's like, "I don't know." And then he was like, "Are you gonna talk about it?" And he's like, "I don't know." And I think Shedeur is kind of trying to avoid it because the problem with Shedeur Sanders, this isn't a problem with him. The problem people have with Shedeur Sanders is that he's Deion Sanders' son. So anytime something happens, there's always the built-in excuse of, well, his dad's the coach, or oh, this is just another instance of daddy ball. And so I think with Colorado struggling, the last thing Shedeur wanted was to sit out because obviously then it looks like, oh, well, it doesn't look like this. People who don't really have a grasp on him or the program are going to say, oh, he quit on his team. Oh, he gave up. Oh, he did this. Oh, he did that. And I don't think that's what Shedeur wanted. But Deion Jr. put a little caption in there that said he had fractured his back. And this is what Shedeur said when he was talking about how he felt. He says, "It's crazy because I feel good, but when I start running for real, it's like the idea is I feel good, but realistically you can't." And then he said, "I can't even throw right now." And this was before the Utah game. So I think it's very admirable that Shedeur Sanders soldiered through this season because there was a lot of doubts about him. There's a lot of doubts about what this team could be, and obviously the team didn't live up to expectations. But Shedeur Sanders threw well. They didn't live up to some expectations by some people. He threw for 3,230 yards, completed nearly 70% of his passes, 27 touchdowns, 3 picks, and this is where it gets bad. He was sacked 52 times, and 52 times is a lot. Led the country, and I think that's a big reason why Colorado struggled this year. Had they had even an average offensive line, I think they probably win 2 or 3 more games, and they just did not have that. And I think that's kind of why. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Sorry, last time, but they had an average offense. If they had an average offensive line, I think they realistically could have won 2 or 3 more games. Shedeur Sanders maybe doesn't get hurt. He was getting sacked because he played 11 games. So let's do our math. 52 divided by 11. He is getting sacked around 5 times a game, which isn't great. Uh, it's just tough. And you could see it in his face every time he got sacked because it's like frustration. But obviously, when you're Shedeur Sanders, you can't yell at your offensive line. You can't be like, guys, what are you doing? He never threw them under the bus. He never once said, if I had better blocking, we would do better. Maybe his dad said that. Maybe his dad/coach was like, I'm going to replace those guys. But Shedeur Sanders showed that he's the ultimate leader. He never once was like, this offense line is not good. I'm not getting protection. I don't have time to throw. He always took it upon himself. He always was accountable. He never said, this group in front of me can't block, and they're the reason that we're struggling. And I admire that from Shedeur Sanders. I think next year in the Big 12, I think if they get a decent offense line, again, I don't know how they're going to get a new offense line just because the portal is an interesting place. There's a lot of guys entering the portal right now. There's a lot of guys who may appear to be good from the group of 5 level, but you never know. It's always a toss up in the portal. You really, truly can never tell who's going to be good, who's not going to be good. And so I think Colorado has to take some calculated risk. I think they have a big offseason ahead of them. They have to, one, this is the assumption. Sean Lewis is probably going to leave. I assume the offensive line coach Tim Boyle is going to go with him, or he's just going to not be a part of the team anymore. Coach Prime said there's going to be staffing changes made anyway, and I think that's where he would probably. So you got to replace your offensive line, offensive coordinator. This is likely, and then you have to get offensive linemen. You have to get offensive linemen who have good film. I think the biggest problem Colorado had this past offseason was they didn't do a good enough job evaluating offensive linemen, and that's why they're in the problem that's why they're in the situation they were. I talked about it when the offensive line was put together. I said it was backups and guys who played at the group of 5 level. None of them were that good anyway. And everybody got on me. They're like, "Oh, you don't know. It's Coach Prime's team. They're gonna do well." Yeah, look how they did. It's not to say that backups all over the country. Maybe there's a guy out there who just hasn't got the opportunity. Maybe there's injury. It's not to say that there's not guys out there that could play well, but trying to build your entire offensive line through the portal with guys who did not play a lot or did not play at a high level last year is not the best move. And so I expect Colorado to kind of recruit it really hard. I expect them to take big swings. They know that they can't risk having another bad offensive line because then you risk wasting Shedeur Sanders' career at Colorado, and you don't want that. And I don't think Coach Prime wants that. So they have a lot of room for improvement on the offensive line, and I think they have a lot. And it's not because the offensive line, like they're losing guys. I think they should retain all the guys, and hopefully they develop into better players. But if Colorado wants to compete in the Big 12, they can't do it with this offensive line. And if they want Shedeur Sanders to perform to his best, they can do it with this offensive line because it's just going to set him up to get hurt again. So Shedeur Sanders, fractured back, played through it. He's a true leader, showed a lot of grit, and I think a lot of people need to give him praise and flowers, but they're probably going to criticize him and because who knows why. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. As the weather cools down, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that includes spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. Okay, we are back and we're talking about the transfer portal. I think it's a very interesting method that Coach Prime is using. I think it's pretty obvious that while they probably will try to flip some guys, I think they're going to go transfer portal heavy again. So, as of right now, most of the guys that are entering the portal are graduates because the portal is not officially open. Um, but they have been going after some interesting guys. So, they've gone after some offensive linemen. They've gone after uh, some Ivy League defensive linemen who are currently the top ranked players in the portal. And so it's definitely interesting to see that they're going to try to run back this portal method. What they need to get in the portal, guys with experience and size, because I think that they went we're just going to get this guy who didn't play, but he went to a big school. You can't recruit the helmet sticker. You cannot recruit the helmet logo. You have to recruit the player himself. And I think Colorado fans got caught up in it all off season where that Colorado would get a guy from Alabama and it's like, oh, that's so cool. Like he's from Alabama. He played for Nick Saban. He has familiarity with Charles Kelly's system. And that I did the same thing. I tried to hype up some of these guys, but he didn't play at Alabama. And a lot of these guys that transferred in for the big schools, like Demoy Kennedy, didn't play a lot. Jaquez Robinson didn't play a lot. Injuries played a factor, yes. But these guys, Kendrick Breedlove came from Ole Miss, not a big impact. Derek McClendon, Florida State, not a huge impact. So you can't get caught up in the logo that was on their helmet because realistically, a lot of these guys are transferring because they were not getting playing time or they were not having the role that they want. That's not the case for everyone, but Colorado needs to go after guys with size and experience. Now, granted, that's easier said than done. Like right now, the top player in the portal is currently, let's see, I forgot his name already. He's from Penn, defensive lineman. From Penn. Okay, Joey Slackman. Joey Slackman is currently the top rated. He's number one in the portal. Obviously, that's probably going to change as more players enter the portal once it opens for the general public. But Joey Slackman, this is who everybody's been going after. He had 97 tackles in 8 seasons, 97 tackles, 8 sacks in 2 seasons. Colorado's not the only team going after him. He has Northwestern, Washington, Florida, Missouri, TCU, Arizona, Wisconsin, Oregon State, Vandy, Miami, Louisville, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Duke, Illinois, Rutgers, Houston. So everybody's going after this guy. Colorado needs to hit on these guys. They need to evaluate these guys and be like, okay, This guy, because like Joey Slackman, for instance, he is 6'4", 300 pounds. Good size. Probably needs to be a little bit bigger. But hey, either way, that's a good size because he's listed as a defensive tackle. That's not going to get it done at the Power 5 level. But they need guys who are big. They need guys who are strong. They need guys who have some experience. And they need trench help. Obviously, offensive line, defensive line, that's the biggest need for them. I don't think it would hurt them to go get a receiver. And you're probably like, why do they need a receiver? They're losing Xavier Weaver. I think Jimmy Horn is a great receiver. I think he has all the tools to be a really good receiver. I also think he's inconsistent at times. I think he gets down on himself really easily. I think there's a lot of times where he kind of checks out. So if they could bring in another receiver to kind of pair with him with Jimmy, great. They also have Tavares Dawson and guys like Omarion Miller on the bench who could maybe step into a bigger role. But I think in terms of priority, they need offensive line, defensive line. I'd probably try to get another corner just to shore up the secondary. So there's right there. So corner, wide receiver. Running back, maybe. It depends on what Ultimate Caskell's doing. He redshirted, which is fine. But does he plan on returning to Colorado? That's the big question because obviously nobody wants to kind of be at a place where they don't feel that they're going to be best utilized. So Ultimate Caskell, what is his plans? If he returns, great. If he doesn't, get a running back because obviously this is what Colorado has coming in as recruits. It's not a deep class by any means. They have one offensive lineman from the JUCO level. They have Cameron McKell, who's a DB, I believe. He's listed as an athlete, 6'1", 181, kind of an athlete, receiver type guy, Travis Hunter role maybe. Aaron Butler, same thing, wide receiver corner. They have Brandon Davis Swing, defensive lineman. Okay. Very undersized, 6'3", 263. That's not going to cut it. Omar White, 6'3", 307. He's the guy he's the recruit that has legal issues. Not sure what happened there, but we'll find out. Eric Brantley, 6'2", 250. Not going to cut it. Isaiah Walker, offensive tackle, number 9 player in the country at the JUCO level. He's coming from Butler Community College, which is one of the top JUCOs in the country. Started his career he went to Florida and Miami. Now he's going to Colorado. 6'4", 309. I like the efforts there. It may work out as Carl Lewis, wide receiver, Trey Bradford, edge, and then Michael Welch, running back. So they have a lot of needs that they could address in the portal, but they need to make sure that they're evaluating guys and not recruiting the helmet sticker. If you're recruiting the helmet sticker, you're going to get a roster like the one you have this year, where it's just a bunch of guys who, quite frankly, weren't ready to be in a main role. And I think character matters as well. I don't want to say this team has character issues, but when Coach Prime is questioning your identity and questioning your love of football halfway through the season, I don't think it's good. So look out for the portal. It opens up, I think, next week. It's going to be a huge, huge tool for Colorado. Again, it's going to be pretty much where I think that they try to build their roster out of again, which we'll see if it works out. You comment below what you think they need. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow as I see you every single day because it's your team every day here on Locked On Buffs.